So hi, happy Friday. I hope you're well. I can't believe tomorrow is a year since I started the podcast. I released the first episode. So I wanted to pop on today and just talk about how 12 months of podcasting has changed my business, changed my life, changed my confidence levels. So I've got lots of things to talk about and how it's kind of evolved over time, and I hope you find it interesting. So I talked in episode 27, 3 months after I started the podcast, about the journey and what I'd learned from podcasting for 3 months. I did the same at 6 months, which is episode 55. And then I didn't do one at 9 months. I'm not quite sure why. I think because the time just goes so quickly that actually it's gone by in a what's the word? A flash, a blink, the blink of an eye, and it's gone past. So I can't believe we're already at 12 months. Tomorrow will be the anniversary, so it's the podcast birthday, and yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited to just talk about how things have evolved and the difference it's made in my business and my life. And I've had some amazing things happening this week as well, which I'll talk about, that's been very poignant, that has come up at this point really. So first of all, I wanted to start off talking about how the podcast started. So it was a bit of an accidental podcast, actually. 2 years ago, I started this Facebook group and I was going live. Every Friday morning, I was going live in the group. And it was one of the things that I was doing consistently. There were plenty of things at that time that I didn't feel like I was doing consistently. Like I wasn't sending out emails every week. I wasn't being consistent. I mean, I'm never that consistent with social media anyway, that's fine. I'm all right with that. But it was the one thing that I was doing regularly, and people were giving me feedback that they were enjoying it. They were liking listening to me talk, listening to me ramble, and hopefully give some tips that were helping them with their SEO and with their websites and making things a little bit more plain and easier to understand, really. And then a conversation with a friend actually led to the podcast coming about. So she asked me whether I knew anything about SEO for podcasts. And at that point, I didn't really, but I said, well, no, I don't, but I'll do a little bit of research and see what's different and let you know. And I quickly found out that SEO for podcasts isn't that much different from other SEO. It's not that much different from optimizing posts for Google Business Profiles or for actually optimizing for your website. It's all about using the language that people are searching for when they're looking either for podcasts or looking for content in general. And one of the big things I found was that podcasts are great for not only showing up in podcast player apps, but also for helping your website to show up in Google as well. So I delivered a training for her program, and it just got my mind thinking of maybe I could start a podcast. Maybe I could turn some of this content that I've already created and that I'm already creating, maybe I could turn it into a podcast. So I did a little bit of investigating on what platform to use, and I wanted to have about 10 episodes before I released the first one. I wanted to feel like people had something to go in and they could listen to a few episodes. I felt like that would keep me going, I think, really. So I decided that I was going to have it really casual and really low key and not perfect, which for me, I'm definitely a perfectionist. And that was one of the hardest parts, is actually accepting the fact that it wasn't going to be perfect, that the mic sometimes might not sound great, that sometimes I do record it in my car. And I often find that when I sit in the car and record, I'm very much more natural. It feels a lot easier. And it's funny, actually, recording on my phone with it propped up on my steering wheel. Sometimes those are some of my best episodes that I've done, really. So I started. I think I released maybe 5, or like very quickly I got up to 10 episodes. I know by the end of my first month I had at least 10 episodes released, and I was enjoying it. I decided at that point that the podcast was going to be hosted in Buzzsprout, which I love. I absolutely love it as a platform. It's really easy to use. It gives you great stats. You can put dynamic content into your podcast. So if I have got something going on in my business, I can record a little intro. I can record a little of, they call it mid-roll. So it goes into the middle of your podcast, and I can record a new outro. And I can just slot that into all of the episodes that are out there. So if somebody comes in and they're listening to episode 3, they'll still get what's going on currently in my business. And that's massively helpful for marketing. I think it really is. And that helps me feel like I'm doing something cohesive and tangible in my business as well. If I go in and I update my intro and outro with something that I'm currently selling and something that I'm currently promoting, I feel like I'm smashing my marketing that week. And I was just literally turning those Friday lives, talking about social media and talking about why you don't have to keep feeding the algorithm, and just generally talking about SEO and just tips and things. And I was enjoying it. I am still enjoying it, very much still enjoying it. But it's one of the things with podcasting is it's a slower form of marketing, and that's part of the reason I like it. So you don't get that dopamine hit of you post to social and it either gets lots of likes and engagement and comments and things, or it doesn't, and you feel like you know if that's succeeded or that's failed. Whereas with podcasting, it's very much more of a slow burn. You feel like you are just talking to yourself, and that's part of the reason why I like coming live in the group and doing it. Because it makes me do it. My goal is to try and it's 10 o'clock now, but my goal is to try and get this recorded and finished before at least 10:30 on a Friday morning, and it then keeps me going. That's part of my process, and I am much better doing that than batch recording. I would love to batch record, but I'm just better when I just come and do it live and just talk. I always feel like I ramble. I'm going to come on to that in a minute about the voice in my head that tells me I'm rambling. And so I wanted it to be natural. I wanted it to be really just me, and not. What I didn't want was for it to be a lot more pressure and a lot more mental load in my business, and a lot more time load as well. I already feel like I never get to the end of my to-do list, and I didn't want the podcast then to become something else that was on my to-do list. And it definitely does take time. Most of my Friday is normally dedicated to something in relation to the podcast. I'm going to talk about all the things that I do as well related to the podcast. But usually Friday is my content creation day, and I'm okay with that actually. And that, again, for my brain, it works well for me to have that structure. So I know what I do. I have a full breakdown of all of the things I do step by step that takes the podcast from being an idea to it being published and done, and everything else that I do around that, really. So when I first started, I'd released some episodes. I didn't think anybody was listening. I thought it was just me, my friend Claire, and that was it, really. I thought that, I listen to my own episodes. I say obviously, maybe some people don't do that. I'm going to talk about why I do that as well. My local networking groups have been massively supportive with the podcast. They've really got behind the mission of it, and they have put up with me rambling on about it and going on about how many downloads I was getting that month. And I'm just so grateful. They've been so supportive with it, as everybody has been as well. Everybody that I meet and talk to about the podcast has been so supportive, and all my listeners as well. I really appreciate you. But in the local group, I went along to a networking event, and I was talking about I'd released a podcast. People were asking me, how can I listen to it? And they were looking on Apple and Spotify, and it wasn't there. And this is one of the mistakes I made, first of all, is I actually forgot to go into the back end. I must have put it on Pocket Cast because I was able to listen to it. But I think I'd just forgotten to go in and set up my Apple account and set up the Spotify account and all of those sort of things. It might have been me just maybe protecting myself a little bit and maybe being a little bit hesitant to put it out there because of, obviously, we all worry about judgment and things. But they encouraged me, and so I did that. Got it live on all those platforms, put it onto YouTube as well. And at that point, I wasn't releasing them as video content. I was just releasing them as audio podcasts onto YouTube. And I kind of had read that, it's not much point doing that, and, don't do it or whatever. But I just thought, well, it's another platform. It's another place that people could listen. And people have listened to those episodes. So it's something that I'm not trying to be a YouTuber. I haven't really developed a strategy around YouTube. It's kind of something where I'm actually just putting stuff there, and I will come back to that and think about strategy at a later date with that, really. But I decided to put it on basically anywhere that I could. So it just automatically, when I release an episode, it automatically pushes it out to those platforms, which that in itself is really great. I love the fact that happens. And when I looked at my download stats, the first 30 days, I had 18 downloads. And then I released it on the podcast apps. And obviously, bear in mind that at this point, I had optimized my show notes and my descriptions, my show art, my show name. I had optimized that for searchability. And then the next month, I had something like, I think it was about 250 downloads. And I was over the moon with that, because that wasn't just people in my networking group that were listening. Like, my networking group have really celebrated those milestones with me. So every month that we meet up, it's like, so where are you with your downloads? And it always seemed like I just hit another milestone before a networking event. And yeah, so that's been really good. One of the missions of the podcast, and one of the things that I decided to do with it, is I deliberately decided that I wanted to grow it without promoting it on social media or paying for ads. And this has become part of the podcast, really. And I think people like it. People like that mission. Everyone seems to hate social media, and anything where it's just showing and proving that you can actually do things without using socials has really connected with people, and they seem to like it. So I decided to grow it without socials. And when I looked this morning, I had 6,315 downloads. And even when I say that number, sometimes I still feel like it's just me. I still feel like it's just me listening and me, that I don't necessarily feel like that's 6,000 downloads is real. And I have to remind myself of that. So every time I hit another milestone, when you hit milestones, you get a badge. So my next badge is 7,500 downloads. My next badge will be 100 episodes. I can't believe this is episode 89 already. And it's, as I say, it's more like a slow marketing, because I don't necessarily, even though I can see those download numbers, I only realize that it's real people when people actually reach out. So when I'm at a networking event or something, or even I'm online and networking, and somebody says to me, I love your podcast. And that was one of the things that happened very early on. So within those first couple of months, probably within the first 6 weeks, somebody who I wouldn't necessarily have expected to listen to my podcast and wouldn't have necessarily expected for it to be helpful for them particularly, and she said, I love your podcast. And actually that one comment was the thing that really kept me going. It was the one thing, just that was the first validation that actually, yeah, this is helpful. People are enjoying it. And I need to keep going with it. And it's amazing what a difference that does make, actually. It really does. And now, when I was looking at my stats this morning as well, the podcast has been listened to in over 75 countries. And my business is fairly international. I have lots of clients over in the US. I've got lots of clients in Europe, worked with clients all over the world, really. And it's not something that I really think about. But when I tell other people that, people have said, you need to say it's an international podcast. And it's something that is funny, but I don't really think about it. But actually, yes, only over 75 countries where people have listened, which is great. I wanted to let you know the most popular episodes. So you never really know what's going to be popular, and it's something that it shows you, like the most popular over time and the most popular in the sort of first 7 days. And even with 6,000 downloads, it still is it's sort of ticking along, really. So each episode is not big numbers. When I look at the numbers, when I look at the individual episodes, it doesn't feel quite so big, but it just shows the accumulation of having that. So it shows that, an episode might not be something that one person needs to listen to, but a different episode might be. And actually it's all people connecting with me. It's all people hearing me speak, hearing me ramble, hearing me like how I talk, and the fact that hopefully that it's helpful content as well. So the most popular episodes have been number 39. That's been the top episode, like throughout the right from when that episode was released. It was really popular, and it stayed as the most downloaded episode. And that is the biggest website and SEO mistakes I see and how to avoid them. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go and have a little listen. And then number 47, which was how I use AI in my personal life, from meal planning to mindset coaching. And I loved that episode. And that's something definitely I would like to lean into more, of how I use AI, both for website and SEO stuff, but also for life in general. I use AI for so much, and I would like to talk more about that as well. And then episode number 3, which is what to do if your web page has had 100 visitors and 0 conversions. So if you haven't listened to those episodes, go and have a listen. They're all very popular, and they're all good ones. So when I was talking to somebody, I was networking yesterday morning, and we were talking about podcasting and talking about monetizing your podcast. And they said, how do you make money from a podcast, really? And I think for me, and if you are a service provider, or if you're selling online courses or those kind of things, selling coaching, or trying to increase your clients, your customer data, the customers that are coming into your business, then monetizing your podcast might come more from actually promoting your own services. And certainly for me, it's bringing in new clients. And that's one of the things that I'm really pleased about, is I'm getting discovery calls. People are actually listening to the podcast, booking on discovery calls, buying my online courses. And even yesterday, I had somebody who I can see through FEA Create, I can see the sort of path of somebody actually coming through and buying with me. And they discovered me on Spotify, and then they went through to my website and they booked a power hour straight away. And that's somebody who is in another country as well. And that was amazing. You know, it's so lovely. I always do a little celebration dance and those kind of things happen really. But that was that's the goal with the podcast, is for it to bring new people into my world, whether they come in and sign up for my email list or they come in and buy from me. That's the goal. It's marketing. Ultimately, it's helping to raise my authority, helping for me to connect with people and to bring new people and existing people into my world and back into my world, really. One of the big benefits is when people do book a discovery call with me, then they feel like they already know me. Like I had somebody recently, we came on the discovery call and she said, I feel like I know you because you've been in my ear for the last 2 weeks. And I definitely feel like that. I listen to so many podcasts. And I've had a few where I've listened to the first episode and it's been like, oh my God, this is so polished. This is so professional. They sound like they're amazing. And it's not like that goes away, but it feels like once I've been listening to them for a while, it feels like they're listening to a friend. And I feel like it would be a lot less intimidating to go and then talk to that person because you feel like you know them. And it's not necessarily that you do, but I feel like certainly if it's not a very scripted podcast, then it is that true person, hopefully. Like this is definitely me. If people listen to my podcast and they don't like the fact that I'm a little bit rambly, then they're probably not going to like working with me realistically. And that I forget my words quite a lot of the time as well. So that's been really great. And that's one way to monetize your podcast. If you get past a certain amount of downloads a month, I think with Buzzsprout, it's 1,000 downloads a month. Then you can start looking at adding ads into your podcast and actually getting sponsored that way. I'm not sure about that. I'm not there yet. I tend to get about 750 downloads a month, roughly, which is great. You know, I have to remind myself of that fact that when I first started, if I had said to myself, okay, in a year's time, you're going to have had 6,000 plus downloads, that's 750 downloads a month, then I would be over the moon with that. And I have to just keep reminding myself of that. But it's something that there's different ways to monetize your podcast with that, really. And you can do sponsorship. It doesn't have to be direct ads in your podcast. You can do, sponsors for each episode, those kind of things. So there are, as I say, there are lots of different ways of actually making money from a podcast. But for me, as a consultant, as somebody who has things that I can sell, that's the sort of part of the reason that I do it as well, really. And the things that have helped me is, as I say, being okay with it not being perfect from the start. And one of the big things with that is also people have said to me that seeing me sort of do it messy and, just getting out there and doing it has also inspired them that they could do it as well. And that is a massive thing for me. I think if it helps anybody else feel like they're not comparing their day one to somebody who's polished and has got a team behind them, has got a full production studio, they feel like they can just get out there and just share their amazing mission with the world and share their knowledge and help people, then that is, if nothing else from the podcast, then that's amazing, really. I use ChatGPT to help me massively, and Google Gemini as well with my podcast production process. I have a Google Doc and it's literally got step-by-step in there. It's got all my, how to create some notes, how to take that. I literally don't have to think. I mean, I've actually taken the podcast, downloading it from Facebook or from my phone, uploading it into Descript. That's the platform I use to edit the podcast. I did get a little bit too caught up in editing, and I have to remind myself that it doesn't have to be polished, and it doesn't, just getting the edit done is more important, and rather than it being absolutely perfect. And as I say, that's not what I want. I didn't want it to be absolutely perfect. And then I then use between that and ChatGPT to create show notes, and I have very descriptive prompts that I use that I've generated over time, and they've improved them over time. In terms of when I first started, I was writing the episode descriptions myself, so I then had some prompts that I could use that were very much my voice, and this is the structure of the show notes and the descriptions and those kind of things that I need. And just through trial and error, I realized that ChatGPT is great at that kind of stuff, not very good at actually creating the transcript, but I use Google Gemini to actually then break it down into better sections, get rid of any spelling mistakes. It doesn't always do that so well, but essentially give me a transcript that's more readable, and one that I can then upload into Buzzsprout, and it's just it's a better transcript, basically. So I use that. I then also use ChatGPT to help me to generate the outline of an email to send out to my email list. So I email my subscribers every single week now, at least once a week, generally, touch wood. I think I've missed a couple of weeks, but generally do that. And that's been great, actually. People tell me as well when they meet me, they tell me they're enjoying my emails and that they are helpful as well. And that's my goal, is for all of this to be helpful, really, and help people to understand that it doesn't have to be overwhelming. The tech doesn't have to be overwhelming. SEO doesn't have to be overwhelming. And just, yeah, if I can deliver one nugget that can help somebody to make some progress that week, then I feel like that it's been worthwhile for me to do that. I now have databases as well with my podcast. That's something I started right from the start, and I would definitely recommend doing that, is to start somewhere where you keep a record of all of your podcast episodes. I have it in Notion, and I also have a Google Doc as well. And right now that is a bit of a doubling up of everything, but it takes me seconds to do. And essentially what that means is within Notion, I have a content database, and that has got everything in there as well. It's got all the lessons from my, like basically the transcript from all the lessons in my membership, all of my social media posts ideas, if I'm doing any social media stuff, all of the podcasts, so the transcripts of the podcasts, the descriptions, the show notes and everything in there as well, which bucket that falls into in terms of the type of content I'm talking about, where it relates to other episodes, the links to the podcast, the links to that episode if it's on my website, as a blog, the YouTube links, all of those kind of things are all there in Notion. And then I have a Google Doc that has literally a new tab for every episode, and it's got in there the show name, the description, the chapters, and the transcript. And the reason I've done it that way is because then that Google Doc I can upload into ChatGPT. And again, it's not been very good at this right now, at actually being able to go through and look through all of the episodes and tell me every episode I've talked about social media, or every episode I've talked about AI, or those kind of things. Right now, it doesn't do it very well. So it's a little bit manual. But as AI gets smarter, I know that that's going to be really helpful having that there. And it's something that I feel like that having that database there, it just means that the content doesn't then completely disappeared, and I can't then come back and reference it and understand where I can link my content together. And especially for my website, actually being able to link that content together is one of the biggest things with SEO, actually, is being able to make the most of your content and show Google that this episode, or this article, you might also then like reading this article as well. And it just all helps to raise your authority and helps Google understand why you're more of an expert in what you actually do. So that's been really helpful having that. I would definitely recommend that if you're thinking about podcasting, then start a database as soon as you start. But the most important thing is that having that standard operating procedure. So having that, literally, this is what I do when I create my podcast, just takes away that mental load of thinking about it every week in terms of what I actually do. I also tag my traffic, and that's part of the reason that I can understand when people come through FBA Create, I can understand exactly how they've kind of ended up in my world. And I have those tags in there as well. So then I can just adjust like the episode number or the date that the email has gone out and those kind of things. So that's been good to have that in there, because then I don't have to go off and generate that somewhere else as well. I deliberately went into this with most of the episodes being me, solo episodes. And obviously from doing the lives in the Facebook group every week before that, they were all just me, realistically. And I like that. I listen to podcasts where they have guests on every week, and you don't necessarily get to know what the host's strengths are. And so, yeah, it's a different strategy. Some people, it's not the same for everybody, but it's been good doing it that way. Those coaching style audit episodes, I really, really look forward to doing them as well and recording them. And that's been really good. And last week I had Adele in from Super Funky Penguin, and we talked about photography. And that's the first one I've done where it's actually been somebody else coming in and talking as the expert. And that was really good. I really enjoyed that as well. Those sort of conversational style episodes are all the ones that I really like. It's funny because when I do an episode like that as well, part of the thing of me getting the transcript is I get the word count, and it's always like maybe 2,000 words more, despite the fact that it might be the same length of episode. I talk a lot more when I'm actually doing the audits, and I think that's partly because it's something I love to do. It's what I get very passionate and like sort of get carried away, and I absolutely love doing those kind of things, really. So after about 6 months, I started adding videos to YouTube. That felt a little bit vulnerable. Definitely YouTube feels a little bit more exposed, I think. The podcast, and it just being voice, feels quite safe. It feels like there's less opportunity for trolls, I think, whereas actually YouTube feels a little bit like, I'm not quite sure why, whether it is because it's quite a masculine space, maybe, I don't know. There's certainly, and it's video ultimately, isn't it? So it is your face, and there's so much expectation as well. I think because you watch polished YouTube videos as well, where they are YouTubers and it's all cameras moving and different shots and things. So again, with YouTube, I had to embrace the fact that that's not what this is about. This is about me coming on, hopefully helping you with some tips. And actually, if I can do that on YouTube, then why not? Why not add that to that? And it has been helpful. It's been helpful in terms of actually showing up on Google. So my videos are now showing up on Google and definitely bringing traffic through. YouTube is different because it's not content that you own. So with the podcast, I own that content. If Buzzsprout go away tomorrow, I can take my episodes and I can move them to another platform, and it's content that I own. Whereas with YouTube, you don't ever really own your own content there. I've also started adding my blogcasts. So this is something where it's a little bit of a hybrid between a blog and a podcast. So it goes onto my own website, an individual URL, a new page for every episode. I don't always manage to get them on there, and I've got lots of them that I need to go back and edit. ChatGPT helps to pull these things out of that transcript, but I have like the most important quote that came out of that episode. Key takeaways, which is one of the things, if you're blogging, one of the best things you can do is actually having at the top of that blog key takeaways from this blog. So if people are coming through, if this blog is answering a question for somebody, if you can tell them straight away what the key things are about it, that can really help with your SEO if you're blogging. I have other notable quotes, links to resources, links to related episodes, an introduction. So it is more like a short blog at the beginning rather than just almost like a tweaked version of the show notes, and then the transcript in there as well. And actually doing those, it's definitely been good in terms of actually building out content on my website that I feel is helpful. I have the embed of both the YouTube video and of the podcast in there as well. So somebody can go onto my website, look at my blogs, and they can either listen, watch, or read this content. And that is something that I'm definitely going to continue doing. It's something that I feel good about. I feel good about the fact that it's helping my SEO, apart from the fact that I realised a few weeks ago that Google actually hadn't indexed quite a few of those pages. So I'd submitted them to index in Google Search Console. I'd been in and added the URL and asked Google to index them. Never went back in and checked, because the ones that I was doing before that, within a day, they were getting indexed. And then went in and realised that half of those articles that were on my website weren't indexed by Google. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens with my own SEO over the next few months and weeks as I go in and make some tweaks to those content and make sure that they are properly indexed. So big tip there, make sure that you're checking that his stuff is actually getting indexed, rather than if you've just requested it and Google has then ignored you for whatever reason, really. And there were some really good ones on there as well. I'm so annoyed, like articles that I published probably at least 6 months ago that I thought were indexed by Google. So yeah, just goes to show. And definitely that, you know, the plumber with the leaky tap, I guess, really, for that one. So in terms of what my podcast has actually bought me and given me, one of the big things I would say is that bank of content. That's the thing that I'm probably the most proud of and has helped with my confidence. So regardless of whether somebody wants to work with me right away, if they don't have the budget maybe to work with me right away, or they're just not quite the right time, I know that I can point them towards podcast episodes. I can point them towards those YouTube videos or those pages on my website, and they will get some value out of that. And even with people that are clients and people in my membership, I still have that there. So the number of times that I've sort of said, oh yeah, I've got a podcast episode around that, let me share the link for it. And it all helps just so that I feel like I'm delivering more value. I feel like I've got a great bank of content there. And that's been really helpful, really. Confidence, it has massively increased my confidence. One of the things that I talk about quite a lot, and I've said about this quite a lot when I've sort of been chatting to people about podcasting, and they've said, oh, I can't stand the sound of my own voice, or I don't have the confidence for it. One of the things I will say is that podcasting has massively helped with that. It's helped with that inner critic. It's not gone away, definitely not. But what I've realized from recording videos, then listening back to them and editing them, and also listening to the edited version as well, it's actually just from editing and from listening to that, it's helped me to understand that voice that is in my head every time I'm speaking, even now, it's there saying to me, you're rambling, you're mumbling, you're not clear, you're going off on a tangent, and it's there all the time. That critical voice is there all the time. And I know that so many people suffer with this, and so many people maybe don't even realize that voice is there. And I think that's the big thing, is that this has helped me realize that voice is there. And it's there whether I'm recording a podcast, delivering training, recording training, delivering a live talk. I've done quite a few live talks over the last year and realised that it's there then as well. And sometimes even just when I'm having a conversation with somebody, if I've been talking for a while and they haven't said anything back, that's when that sort of starts to chime in, that voice there really. And listening back to it and doing the edits has helped me to understand that it's not true. So the first time I recorded a video for my Facebook group, I was sitting in a local pub and I thought, oh, well, I'll just record a quick video. And I recorded it and I got 3/4 of the way through and I thought I stumbled. So I stopped and I started again. And then when I came home and edited it, I realised that the stumble wasn't really even a stumble. Like there was nothing, I can't remember what I did, but it would have been fine. I could have either edited just that bit out, or it didn't even need editing. I think that was the big thing, is that I realised there that I didn't even need to edit it. It was fine. And that was a bit of a light bulb moment. So I think that was kind of one of the first points that I realised that. But actually from doing that week on week through the podcast, listening to it, editing it back, and realising that it's okay and it sounds good and I do know what I'm talking about and I don't sound like a moron, it's been massively helpful. And it's been helpful in just quieting that voice down and just recognizing that it's there. I'm like this, I'm like quieting it down. I imagine it now as just somebody sitting on my shoulder, little Cruella sitting on my shoulder, and actually just there, and it just helps me to like just squash her down a little bit. I know you're there, I know you're trying to protect me, but it's not true. And I think that's been the if nothing else came out of the podcast, that is the biggest thing for me really. As I say, I am now emailing my subscribers regularly, and that's been really good. I have definitely embraced not being perfect more from doing the podcast. I went through a time where I started overthinking it and started over planning and started over script, like not scripting as in like having a script that I was reading from, but just putting too many notes together. And I feel like then I lost a little bit of me, a little bit of that rambliness, which is part of me. So that is definitely something that happened kind of in the middle. And that was actually me thinking about whether I'm giving people actionable value each week or whether I'm, sharing too much. And again, it's just those voices that pop up and say, you're not good enough, basically. That helped me, because it helped me to think about, okay, what actions can I give people to do this week? But it doesn't need to be perfect. So if I don't do that, if I don't give you one action to do this week and it's just a little episode like this, which is a little bit rambly, that's okay as well, I think. Let me know if it's not. If you always want an action step, then I can always add that in. But it's just that thing of overthinking it, and just, that even when you've been doing it a while, sometimes those things do creep in as well, really. What else have I done? So I released a SEO for Podcast course as well. So I did a live workshop, released a course, like the workshop replay, ignored it for about a year, actually. It was before I had a podcast, so it must have been well over a year ago, actually. And I did it, recorded it, and then never did anything with it, never promoted it, never talked about it or anything, never went back through and actually edited it into bite-sized pieces. And I did that a few weeks ago. I went back in and edited it, and what I realised from doing that, again, realised it was a lot better than I thought it was, realised it was something that I need to be selling. And I'm actually going to do a little promotion on that in relation to the podcast anniversary as well. But I wouldn't have had that, I think. This is all tied into releasing the podcast. Maybe if I hadn't have done that workshop, I wouldn't have been more inclined to actually then release a podcast. And maybe that's part of the reason why I was hesitant to sell that. I know that was definitely something that I had when I did that workshop, was like, well, if I haven't got a podcast, am I an authority to talk about this? And actually I was. Even without a podcast, I knew the things that helps podcasts to actually get results and to be more visible in search. And it's simple tweaks with SEO for podcasts. That's one of the things I absolutely love is it's simple tweaks that you can make in your podcast hosting platform today, and that can show up straight away, and then you can start getting more downloads straight away. And actually, one of the things, I thank you, Angela, for leaving me a message yesterday telling me that she was here on that workshop. She did the things that I told her to do, and it worked. So that's amazing to hear that, really. That's really good to hear that. I feel like I have just scratched the surface with this as well, with my podcast. I feel like there's so much potential in terms of it actually helping me to grow my business, and in terms of getting the word out there about it. I feel like I've just scratched the surface. One of the things I would say, if you're thinking about podcasting, but you don't want to start your own podcast, is really think about getting on other people's podcasts. If you can be a guest on other people's podcasts, then it's a great way to introduce yourself to podcasting. It's a great way to get yourself out there as the expert. And as I say, I think if you're the expert going on somebody else's podcast, you actually then you are the expert rather than the host. So I think that's a really great way to do it, and that you can be very strategic about the kind of podcasts that you want to get on, and thinking about just growing those relationships. And it doesn't even have to be specifically what you're selling. If you're just getting on there and having a chat. I was recently on the Digital Dominators podcast with Sue Young, and we were just having a chat. We were just geeking out about AI and websites and SEO, and it was so lovely. But those kind of things can really help with your visibility. One of the things as we move more into AI search is that we need to be seen across the web as the authority in what we do, and actually being on other people's podcasts can be really helpful. And it's content that sticks. It's content that doesn't go away. It's not like social media content, which is often either buried behind a login or it's something that just disappears. I had a client last month who found me through being on Adam Chatterley's podcast, which was the first podcast I went on, and that was more than 2 years ago. And I got a new client from that, literally within the last month or so. And so those kind of things, you never know how that's going to then bring you visibility and bring you clients, and help your business from now onwards. Really, that's why I love that. Really. One of the things I think is really important if you are thinking about a podcast is being clear on who you're talking to. So understanding who your listeners are, and that doesn't mean that you won't get people outside of that, and you won't get people outside of that find your content valuable. But if you're really clear on who the podcast's for, how you want to help them, then that can make a big difference when you're starting. I would always say, as I said, listen to your own podcast as well. It's something that helps. It helps you to understand that, yeah, you do know what you're talking about. The things that I want to do differently and want to be better at, I would love to be better at planning episodes relating to what I cover. I think it's something that quite often haven't decided what I'm talking about until literally the night before or Friday morning. And, it's worked so far, but it does put the pressure on, really. Quite often it's things that have happened in the week and I just come on and talk about that. But I would really like to make sure that I'm covering what I need to, so that you're getting as much value as you can out of the podcast, really. I would love to embrace the rambles more. Something that I feel like letting that come through and letting even more of my personality come through would be helpful. I feel like actually this is where doing it live, I would like to batch some episodes, but I feel like doing them live is so much better for me. It just keeps me going, and it's just a lot more natural, I think, really. I would like to also have a bit more strategy about people listening and then coming into my world, either becoming subscribers, joining my membership, or joining me as one-to-one clients. I feel like actually that part of it is where I feel like I've just scratched the surface, really. I've got some ideas for things like a weekly website checklist, a website scorecard, those kind of things, which I think could actually help people to go beyond just listening to the podcast. Not that matters, because if people can be listening, and you can be listening to a podcast for a long, long time and then decide to actually take that next step on the journey, really. If I was starting the podcast again now, what would I do differently? My big one would be to make sure I was listed everywhere in the first month, because the sooner you get yourself onto those platforms, the sooner that people can start discovering you. I would have added YouTube sooner. I think it was something that I kind of made into a bit of a big thing, and actually just adding videos in from those early episodes probably would have been good as well. I would definitely have created the blogcast episodes sooner. I would have done them better sooner as well. But it's hindsight. You just don't know. You have to try things and be okay with them just being, it's fine. It's just the transcript on there. But I would have done that sooner. And maybe with those, that's part of that planning. I would have actually planned a bit more of where have I got some gaps in my SEO, where have I got some gaps in my authority on my website, what episodes are the most important with that, and then making blogcast episodes around that, really. I think I would do more summits, guest posting, guest podcasting, shouting about it, talking about the successes in communities. So I don't promote the podcast on social media, but like when I've hit a milestone and some of the communities I'm in, the private communities I'm in, I will then, if it's weekly wins, it's like, yeah, I've got to 5,000 downloads with my podcast. I don't actually share the podcast there or anything, but just those kind of things, I would do more of that. And definitely the promoting it outside of social, I think it makes me more aware that I need to promote it. Whereas maybe if I was creating social posts, I wouldn't necessarily be so aware of every time I'm networking, every time I meet new people, I always try and mention my podcast. And it seems to happen naturally. I think that's the thing, is I'm not forcing it. It seems to happen naturally. But actually, yeah, that's something that I would definitely do more of that. One of the things I was thinking about is, would I promote it on social media? So if I was going back to day one, would I do it differently? Would I still keep that mission of not promoting it on socials? And 100% I can say I would not do it differently. I've loved doing this as an experiment. I've loved the fact that it's helped people to get behind the podcast, and people love the fact that I've got to this number of downloads without the social media. And yeah, I definitely wouldn't do that differently. If I wasn't an SEO consultant and I was trying to grow a podcast, I probably wouldn't recommend doing that. What I would probably recommend is that you do have it on your bios, you do have it occasional posts and those sort of things. What I wouldn't do is have it as a big part of your social media strategy, that you've got to, every time you release an episode, you've got to do a load of promotion, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, which that seems to be where it gets very heavy for people, really. So I would say, if you weren't an SEO consultant who was doing an experiment to show that it is possible to grow a business without social media, then I would talk about it a little bit, probably. So ultimately, this podcast is all about helping people to understand how to make their website work for their business. So I would like to just make sure that I'm spending more time thinking about that and making sure that actually that is what's happening. That is how I'm helping people. But also I want it to be entertaining. I want it to be, as not just about tech and about websites. I want it to be about being a woman in business, about how beauty, wellness, purpose-led businesses can embrace technology and actually not get left behind, and can help to make a difference to their themselves and their families. Everything in my business is all about that. It's all about helping women to earn more money so they've got more freedom and more choices for themselves and for their families. And that's ultimately, if the podcast is helping with that, then I'm doing what I set out to do as well, really. I love using AI, and I would love to talk more about that. I'd love to help people to use that more, both for them, their business, and for their personal life, certainly in relation to SEO and websites, but life and business in general, and just how we can embrace it, not be scared of it, and also not let that take away from us, and really embrace that human connection, which with the industries I work with, that human connection is never going to go away. People will always want that, definitely. I would love to talk more about the tech platform that I use. So I use FEA Create, which is part of High Level. I would love to talk more about that. So let me know if you want to hear more about that. I thought about maybe doing a mini series around that. Maybe it would be just as a separate sort of mini series. That would be quite cool to do if people like it. I love geeking out on that kind of stuff. I had a client this week, we did a power hour, and it was literally, we were diving into her, she's using another high level white label, I can't remember what it was called, but it's essentially the same platform. And we were diving in, looking at some of the things that always trip people up with SEO with that platform, and just fixing it. And it was great. I love doing that kind of stuff. And also there's new features coming out all the time. And so, yeah, maybe what I will do is just do a mini series, see how that goes. We'll see what happens anyway. I'll see, let me know what you think anyway. What platforms are you using? What tech are you using that you would like me to sort of discuss as well, really? So one of the big things with podcasting is we're creating content that we own. And I've got a few episodes around this and around the sort of anti-social media, or not anti-social media, but the not feeling like we have to do social media and that's the only way to grow a business. And it's the conversation that I have time and time again with people, where actually they've got this notion and this theory that they have to use social media, otherwise they can't exist, they can't have a business that's successful. And first and foremost for me, before anything, before SEO, before websites, before social media, before anything else, it's the relationships that can grow your business. And so I think if you're not sure where to start, you're not sure what to do to increase your business, increase the visibility of your business, start with that. Start with your relationships, building relationships with people you know, local networking if you're a local business, networking online, getting yourself out there, getting out there and building relationships with other people who've got podcasts or who've got visibility or communities that you can actually then become part of. Focus on that first, and then focus on content as well, content that you own, really. So a couple of episodes you could listen to. So episode number 2 was why you don't need to keep feeding the algorithm and how to use your existing content potential to show up in search. And then episode 62 is less social, more success, 3 sustainable strategies to build your business without social media. So go and have a listen to those episodes as well. And there's quite a lot of my episodes that I haven't actually got on my own website. As I was looking through and looking at the episodes this morning, I was thinking, oh, that's a really good one. I need to get that on my website. There's so much there that really speaks to the things that people need help with, that actually that's something I need to go back and do, and actually just creating more of a plan of how to make the most of the content I've already created, as well as then be strategic about the content I'm creating moving forward. And just helping to, for me also, to move away from using social media. I don't use a massive amount of social media in my business, but I do feel that pull. I feel that thing of, oh, well, maybe if I just post on LinkedIn a few times more, then I'll be a millionaire. And I know it's not true, but I feel that pull as well. I feel that thing of you have to do it. So that's part of the thing of moving forward, of actually how can I get visibility? How can I get my podcast and my website more visible outside of social media as well? And part of that is working on my own SEO. It's something that I don't need millions and millions of visitors to my website. And it's the same for my clients as well. You don't need millions of people. You just need the right people finding you at the moment they're actually searching for a solution to their problem or for what you sell. And that's all part of it, really. So let me know what you would like to hear more of. Let me know if you have any questions, or if you've got things that you would like me to cover in the podcast moving forward, let me know. And if you want help getting your website to work for your business, visit my website or send me a message and we can explore the ways that I can help you, whether it's booking a power hour or joining my membership or working with me for one-to-one consulting. I'd love to chat and just see if I can help you, or where I can help you to get unstuck and ultimately to get more traffic and sales through your website. So it's a beautiful day. It's really lovely out there today. I'm definitely swimming tomorrow. Last week the water was 17 degrees, which is it's like a bath from me. It's really not. When I get in, it still feels cold, but it's very different to 3.6 degrees in the middle of the winter. But either way, I still need to get in that water. I need the cold. I really enjoy it. So whatever you're doing this weekend, I hope you have a great one. And thank you so much for listening today and over the last year. And I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you.